NASCAR's fan favorite Chase Elliott breaks a long winless streak, and many of drivers get turned sideways trying to use the top groove. Let's talk about NASCAR in Texas. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in the Lone Star State at Texas Motor Speedway, where Chase Elliott breaks a 42 race winless streak, first time he's won since 2022 in Talladega in the fall. We'll talk about that and what that means for Hendrick Motorsports and Chase Elliott particularly. Of course, we'll look at some of these wrecks that we had today, many of wrecks today by drivers trying to pass in the outside lane, just could not get it to stick. A very edgy, sketchy racetrack at Texas Motor Speedway, saw a lot of wrecks. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some drivers that sort of probably should have won this race, had a good chance to win, had the fastest car, and had big issues. We'll break down everything that happened today and analyze everything that happened at Texas Motor Speedway today. But first off, we have to talk about the main story, which is some people might not like it, some people might, but Hendrick Motorsports, once again this season, every race this year has been won either by a Joe Gibbs Toyota or a Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet, except that Daniel Suarez win back in Atlanta. So certainly interesting that happens again. But Chase Elliott, first win of the season for him, punches his ticket in the playoffs. So now 3 of the 4 Hendrick drivers have now won. William Byron, obviously, with his 3 wins. And then, of course, Larson and Elliott with both won now. But this is a really big win for Chase Elliott because we talked about all year last year. Chase Elliott had the most wins in 2022 of any driver, which was 5, which is sort of on the low end if you look at history. You go back to like 2018, it was like 8. You go back to 2020, it was like 10 wins for the winningest driver. But the 5 was a little low for Chase Elliott that year, but he was the winningest driver nonetheless, made the championship race, won the championship in 2020 as well. But ever since we started that 2023 season where Elliott got hurt going into the 3rd week of the year, then got suspended later on after the Coke 600 with Denny Hamlin, it was just an off year for Chase Elliott. We saw instances where we saw like peaks of glamour and glory for Chase Elliott, but he never got to victory lane. He never really contended for a race win. I think maybe at Daytona or Talladega there'd be times where he would get up front, but at a typical intermediate track, we never really saw Chase Elliott dominate or have that winning form like he did in 2022 and previously, right? Especially at road courses, which we talk about how good he is at those tracks. But today, really last week, was the first week we saw Chase Elliott back to that form where he was leading, really in contention, finished in the top 3 last week. I think it was second last week, maybe. Really solid week last week for Chase Elliott. Then, of course, a really solid day today wasn't the fastest car early on. That was obviously Kyle Larson. Tyler Reddick was really fast as well. Then you had Denny Hamlin at the end. But then you had Chase Elliott really come to life as the sun went down. The big Texas grandstands with the big press box and the other suites on top of it. The shade came over a large portion of the front straightaway. I'm not sure if that had something to do with it or not, but as the race continued to go on, Chase Elliott really became the faster car. And then, of course, you had the other guys really took themselves out of it. Once again, huge win for Chase Elliott because this shows that Chase Elliott is back to winning form, right? This puts him in the playoffs, guaranteed. You don't have to worry about that. Now he can take risks, get more wins, and back to potentially championship form, right? The only outlier really is still Alex Bowman, still on his 2-year winless streak. He hasn't won since Vegas in 2022, early in the year. I think it was the 3rd race of the year. So we'll have to watch Alex Bowman moving forward to see if he can kind of get over that hump and get his win and be the 4th Hendrick driver to get a win. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But let's take a look at what my big 3 drivers of the day were, right? Of course, you have Denny Hamlin at the end of the race trying to go for the win, just got loose, car slipped around from him. I think this was the second to last restart maybe, and Denny Hamlin completely lost control, trying to pass on the high side, just did not work at all today. We saw it multiple times, and we'll take a look at more of that in a little bit, but Denny Hamlin just got loose. Chase Elliott in his interview was kind of like, they've had history in the past. He was kind of like sort of apologizing if he did something, but he said he didn't think he did anything. From what I can see, Chase Elliott was just racing clean. I don't see anything Chase Elliott did wrong at all. Just Denny Hamlin just getting out of the groove there. And the groove is so narrow at this track, but if you want to pass, it works sometimes, but if you overstep just a little bit, it's so hard to correct the car, and that's what we saw so many times in the high lane. The driver gets sucked around and backing into the wall as Denny Hamlin did. It happened multiple times today. Tyler Reddick was another really fast car, had problems on pit road, then obviously issues later on a restart. Unfortunately, Tyler Reddick was really fast but was unable to come up with the win. Reddick was really fast, just got out of the groove again. He didn't wreck, but slid way up the racetrack, almost hit the wall, took Tyler Reddick completely out of contention for a victory. Ultimately, he did come back to finish fourth, which was good, but really took him out of chance to get a victory. Kyle Larson was another one of those really strong drivers at the beginning of the race. He started out up front, looked to be really fast, and then had a tire come off. And the new rule is, and this is the first time I think I've really seen it with the leader, at least, unless there's something I'm not quite remembering, but this is the first time I've seen it with the leader since this rule was implemented. If the wheel comes off, it used to be a crew chief got suspended. Now NASCAR gets to pick the crew members that get suspended for a couple of weeks, which can be the crew chief, I believe, but most likely won't be. It won't be Cliff Daniels, I don't think. And of course, you get a 2-lap penalty when that wheel falls off, because we were seeing in 2022 the wheels would come off way too much. Remember, that's very dangerous, right? I mean, you look at Indy and last year, wheels flying around, these heavy wheels from Goodyear. We don't need these flying around the racetrack, right? We need these to be stuck on the car at all if possible, and we don't want these rolling around the racetrack with cars going 195 miles an hour in the corner of Texas whatsoever, because those things will fly for sure. So I understand that the strict rule, but NASCAR had this rule in place in 2022 where the crew chief would get suspended, then we saw wheels come off, and then the driver be leading before the end of the race. So certainly NASCAR needed to step in. They inserted a 2-lap penalty, which really dampened Kyle Larson's race, put him 2 laps down. You have to run your car harder. You have to come back. It's hard to come back from 2 laps down. Luckily, with all the wrecks and cautions, Larson was able to. But back in the dirty air, man, track position was key today, as it is a lot of weeks right now on the NASCAR's calendar with this new car. And Kyle Larson, I think he might have lost a little bit of speed too. Maybe, I don't know if there was damage from that wheel coming off or what, but was nowhere near contention for the win once that happened. I mean, he was 20th, 18th, just could not find his way up front to compete for the win after that, which was sort of surprising. We got to see how Larson would handle in dirty air and without the clean air up front, without the track position, and it just wasn't great for Larson. I mean, he was able to get to maybe sometimes in the top 20, but ultimately finished in the 21st position, so not a great day for Kyle Larson at all. He did get stage points, though, which is very important. So I didn't put Chase Elliott on this list just because I wanted to sort of, maybe it was more of me just wanting to break down the drivers that I thought were the top, that I thought had big implications in this race, which was obviously Reddick, Hamlin, and Larson. But Chase Elliott was definitely, maybe he was even in the top 3, but certainly a solid 4th place car. But remember, those other drivers took themselves out, and Chase Elliott was there to capitalize at the end. Almost William Byron was up there as well. But let's take a look at the entire top 10. We have, once again, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski. Keselowski, another one of those drivers that's on a very long winless streak. We saw one broke today. We had Brad Keselowski that said, talked to him pre-race. It just didn't quite have the speed so far this season to get those victories, trying to get over that hump, to get back into victory lane, that RFK team. They did it last year with Chris Buescher. Can they do it this year with Buescher and or Brad Keselowski? Keselowski was close today, had fresher tires, was running the leader down. Solid top 2 day for Brad Keselowski. Glad to see him back up in the top 2. I do think that it will be sooner rather than later. We'll see that number 6 car, Brad Keselowski, 2012 NASCAR champion. 30-something time race winner. Definitely competing for wins more consistently soon. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I'm expecting to see Keselowski get a win this season. I thought it would be last year. I said it. It never happened. We'll see if he can finally break this over 100 race winless streak and get back to victory lane for Brad Keselowski. Tyler Reddick, already talked a little bit about him. Solid 4th place finish. I think I skipped Byron there. Another solid run for Byron. Byron was really a 6th, 7th, 8th place car all day long. That's sort of where he was running. But on the overtime restarts, we know Byron can capitalize on overtime restarts, right? Was able to come all the way up, get a nice 3rd place finish. So a solid points day once again for William Byron, which is once again why he's really dangerous and most likely or definitely is the championship favorite right now. Just very dangerous how he's able to go up there and get solid top 3 finishes consistently. You had Daniel Suarez, a nice 5th place finish for him. I think he was outside the top 10, outside the top 15 for a majority of the day. Was able to get up there. Solid top 5 finish for him. It's been a rough stretch for him. He won at Atlanta earlier this year, has been nowhere close to winning after that, and then of course really hasn't had the results. I don't even know if he's finished in the top 10 since then. We'd have to go back and look, but a nice top 5 day for the 99 Trackhouse Chevrolet. The other Trackhouse Chevrolet, Chastain, did very well as well. I wanted to throw him in there, but got wrecked on the final lap by William Byron, and unfortunately did not get a top finish at all. Flew back in multiple positions with that wreck on the final lap. Chase Briscoe, nice day for him in the 14 car. You're starting to see him get better results, at least comparing year over year, right? So solid day for him, finishing in the 6th position. Bubba Wallace was able to take advantage of those late race restarts. He actually spun, made a little bit of contact with the wall. Another driver was able to come up, nice 7th place finish. And Wallace has been known, really. You go back to Daytona, you go back to Atlanta this year, today in Texas. He's really been capitalizing on some of these points. Points he doesn't have, he's able to go up there and grab. Points that he does have, like last week in Martinsville, didn't do anything to blow it. So solid season right now for Bubba Wallace trying to make that playoffs. I think he's going to be solidly in. Potentially could see him continuing for wins moving forward. Austin Dillon really needed this, right? Top 8, top 10 finish for him is fantastic. It's been a rough season for him start to finish. Wrecked multiple times in the first few laps of the first 3-4 races of the year. Nice to see him get an 8th place finish. Also really nice to see Kyle Busch get a top 10. Kyle Busch really was outside the top 20 for a majority of the day. It was around 20th, 21st position, went a lap down in the first stage, but was able to find a little bit of speed, use track position, overtime restarts, cautions to his advantage, tires to his advantage to get a nice top 10 day. Once again, going into today, Kyle Busch was only 1 point in the playoffs. We'll start taking a look at the point standings a little more too as we get closer to the 600 following Talladega here on the show as well. But going into this race, Busch was only 1 point in the playoffs, so certainly a 9th place finish will help him. And then Carson Hocevar, the rookie, nice top 10 day for him, right? Spun earlier on in the race, was one of those victims using the high lane, got spun around, but was able to come all the way back up, get a nice 10th place finish. I'm impressed with what Hocevar is doing, right? You have Corey LaJoie, who's been racing for a long time, Cup Series veteran for Spire Motorsports. And then you have the same race car with Ty Gibbs last year, which was, I'd say there was not as much effort being put in when Ty Gibbs was the driver by the driver or the team, right? But, he was running 30th or running last place every week last year. So for Carson Hocevar to come in like this, get top 10 finishes, run consistently, rookie season, I'm not expecting him to win. He's fast. He's not quite capitalizing, getting the results, which is normal for rookies. You got to keep that in mind, especially younger rookies like Hocevar is. To make mistakes is very common, but for him to just be running in the top 10 and then to finish top 10 today, I believe this is the first top 10 he's got in the Cup Series. Very impressive. I think that's very impressive for him to do, especially in equipment that has not really been up to par over the last few years and has really not really been up to par this year either with Corey LaJoie. So certainly good to see him in the top 10. That's really all I want to mention as far as the results and stuff. Once again, we did have a lot of wrecks today. I have a list of drivers here. I know Josh Berry got spun on lap 121. Michael McDowell backed it into the wall, completely took him out of the race. John Hunter Nemechek, big wreck later on in the race after the original wreck that he was in with Alex Bowman. And collected John Hunter Nemechek as well. So we had a few big crashes today at Texas Motor Speedway trying to use that high lane. Once again, this is a very sketchy racetrack, right? You're put in a little box where you can't really go to a higher groove if you want to, but certainly interesting that we saw that. I wanted to point that out as we've seen this every year, right? Even with the old generation of race car, you just can't quite go to that top lane, and it's the only racetrack that's so specific like that. So certainly interesting, but that's it. That's really all there's to talk about. Talladega next week is going to be exciting. Please like and subscribe if you like the video. And then, of course, about Kyle Busch finally finding his way into the top 10 for a solid run. Let's get rowdy.